On today's episode of Locked On Wild, in case of Matt Boldy slander, let's break the glass.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we quiet the Matt Boldy critics as more Matt Boldy discourse has popped up online. We'll tell you why that is just not accurate and why Matt Boldy does score against teams not named the San Jose Sharks. We'll also take a look at a get-right game for the Minnesota Wild against the Sharks and get you ready for tonight's matchup against the Anaheim Ducks, as well as hearing John Hynes' post-game comments about a bunch of Wild players having a solid bounce-back effort after a clunker against the Los Angeles Kings. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild since 2021, credentialed media member, and we got to do it again. I've done this a couple of times this season and going to have to do it again because there's a prevailing theory out there amongst Minnesota Wild fandom that Matt Boldy is a garbage time goal scorer. And what do I mean by that? I mean that he only scores his goals against teams that are not in playoff contention. 2 goals against the San Jose Sharks. And that gives Matt Boldy now 8 goals on the season in 13 games, which puts him in first place amongst Minnesota Wild forwards so far this season. And let's take it even a step further than that. Matt Boldy is a top 15 goal scorer so far this season. He is tied with the following players in goals: Ross Colton, Connor McMichael, Sam Bennett, Alex Ovechkin, Dylan Larkin, Alex Laferriere, Braden Point, and Nikolai Ehlers. He has more goals so far this season than some notable names such as Matt Duchene, Kirill Kaprizov, Kevin Fiala, Brady Tkachuk, Chris Kreider, Nino Niederreiter, Mark Scheifele. Need I go on? No, I don't think I need to. A top 15 scorer in the NHL. He comes into tonight's game against the Anaheim Ducks with a 6.3 expected goals on the season. He's scored 8. So he is actually doing better than what his statistics say he should be doing. And if you look at the course of his career, in 8 games against the San Jose Sharks, Boldy has scored a total of 6 goals. He has also scored 6 goals against the Seattle Kraken, the Detroit Red Wings, and the Philadelphia Flyers. But let's take a look at the teams that he's scored goals against so far this season to see if they are, quote-unquote, legitimate goals, if they have come against legitimate playoff caliber teams. Columbus Blue Jackets, not a playoff team. Okay, I'll give you that one. The Seattle Kraken are trying to be, but as of right now, they are not. Other teams that Boldy has scored against this year include the Florida Panthers. Check. They're a playoff team. Tampa Bay Lightning. Last I checked, they're a playoff team. And the Toronto Maple Leafs, who don't let their record fool you. It's a team that still has the likes of Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, and more. That will be a playoff team come the end of the season. Oh, but it hasn't happened against any of the legitimate Western Conference contenders so far this season. Okay, the Western Conference teams that the Wild have played so far this year include the Los Angeles Kings, the Seattle Kraken, the Winnipeg Jets, and the St. Louis Blues. That's it. So why are we at this point in the season Why are we bemoaning the fact that Matt Boldy hasn't had the opportunity to score against Western Conference contenders when they haven't played any? The Winnipeg Jets, that's one, and Boldy had no goals in that game. He was a -1, but it was a 2-1 loss in OT. The Wild scored 1 goal in that game. In the game against the St. Louis Blues, the Wild won that game pretty handily, 4-1. Boldy didn't score in that game. The game against the Los Angeles Kings, that was a loss for the Minnesota Wild, 5-1. So I suppose you could go that route if you want to, but let's look at the full picture here. Boldy comes in 8 goals and 15 points in 13 games so far this year. He is on pace for a 50-goal season. He's on pace for right around a 90-point year as a 23-year-old. He is shooting a career-high 16.3%. He has 49 shots on goal in 13 games. I think he has had maybe 1 or 2 games. So he's had 1, 2, 3. He has had 3 total games out of 13 that he had fewer than 3 shots on goal. That's it. Beyond that, it's been 3 or more shots every game. And the one game in which he had 1 shot on goal was against the Florida Panthers, and he scored. His statistics so far this year, he's playing a career high in minutes on ice of 1941. He's getting more consistent faceoffs, and he's winning 56% of the draws that he's taken. All of the numbers are trending in a higher direction for Matt Boldy, and this is exactly what we were looking for when the season began. We talked about it. Everydayers know that we talked about it extensively in the offseason. Matt Boldy has had a great career so far. His 82-game average is 32 goals, 39 assists, 71 points in 82 games. Did he start the season off last year slow? Absolutely he did. In the first 19 games of the season, 1 goal. That's not going to cut it. We said that going into the offseason. That's not going to cut it again for a guy who's expected to be a prominent part of this team. But all of the numbers have been exactly where they need to be. 8 goals in 13 games. Much better start to the season than what he had last year. And statistically, he's going to shatter every record that he has had so far in his young career. He's on pace to break his record for shots on goal, so he's shooting the puck more. He understands that he is more of a focal point on this team. And so I guess I sit here and just kind of throw out into the airwaves, what's not to like? What's not to like at this point in his career? If you are expecting him to be a Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon type player, he's not that, but that doesn't mean he's not a good player. So I guess I would say if you are on the fence about Matt Boldy being a key component for this Minnesota Wild team, just look at what you are asking of him and what your expectations are of that type of a player. And maybe it's your expectations are just way too high. Because so far this season, Matt Boldy has been great. There's maybe one game that you can point to in which 1 or 2, I will grant you maybe 2 of 13, in which you look and you say, yeah, he maybe could have done a little more to try to help the Wild pick up a win. But beyond that, he's locked in offensively. He's doing a great job of helping his line keep the zone. There are a lot of good things that Matt Boldy is doing so far this season, and he is not on the list at this point. It's a much smaller list than it was last year of things that could potentially be issues, but Matt Boldy's not even on my list. he doesn't even I don't even put his name down. There are far more pressing things that deserve attention and deserve time. That nitpicking Matt Boldy not scoring against Western Conference opponents when he's done it against playoff caliber teams already this year. And one player in particular, one player's scoring, there are several different factors that can lead to a player not being able to score against a particular team. It's not necessarily the player themselves. So we're going to have to like divert energy to where it needs to be put, because saying that a guy who has scored 8 goals in 13 games so far this season after having 1 goal in 19 games last year, saying that it's still not enough, it's not enough for you, but it's plenty for many of the people that not only follow the team, but that cover the team. It is far and above what would be expected. A top 15 scorer in the NHL. If that's not up to your expectations, I don't know what to tell you, because I think he is pretty highly exceeded. Now, it's early. We are moving into the teens in terms of games so far this year. It's early. If it slows down, sure, we'll talk about it. But if he continues at anything even remotely close to this pace, you're looking at a 40-goal season as a 23-year-old. That's hard to find. Not scoring against Western Conference playoff caliber teams. I don't know. But that's all we're going to say about it. That's all we're going to talk about it, because we are going to move our attention to last night's get-right game. It was a lot of what we expected, but that doesn't mean that it's not good for the Wild to get a few things back on track as they beat the San Jose Sharks last night. We'll talk about the game as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is also brought to you by Game Time. We're getting into the nitty-gritty of the NFL season, college football, plus the NBA and the NHL are in full swing, which means there are no shortage of opportunities for you to see your favorite team in action. Whether it be a big college football rivalry or a Central Division clash in the NHL, Game Time can help you secure the best tickets available so you can spend all of your time worrying about where you're going to go to get the night started, or where you're going to go to see the night through. Right now, Game Time is having an exclusive zone deal for the NHL Winter Classic event at Wrigley Field. Go to the Game Time app to purchase tickets and get 10% off bleacher seating and 20 to 25% off on home plate area seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. As I mentioned on yesterday's show, we will be getting back to live post games next week in the midst of getting some things cleaned up, as you can see behind me here. So we'll have a return to the normal schedule for you coming up next week. But for now, no postcasts, no post game tonight. But we'll talk about the win as we get you rolling here through the season. But let's talk about last night's game. A 5-2 win for the Minnesota Wild. Should probably have been a 7-2 win, but a couple of goals were waved off the board. And for the Wild, it was a get-right game. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a San Jose Sharks team that you should be able to beat, and the Wild did that. A little bit better performance from the special teams as they go 3 for 3 on the penalty kill and also 1 for 3 on the power play. And it's a Sharks penalty kill that had been perfect over the last 5 games, and the Wild were able to finally break that drought, as they had been over parts of the last 5 games. They were 0 for 16 at one point, and the Wild were able to crack that. All told, the goal scorers for the Minnesota Wild include Zach Bogosian, who is the first Wild defenseman since Matt Dumba to score the opening goal in back-to-back games. Matt Zuccarello scores his 6th of the season. Matt Boldy scores in the second period on the power play to make it 3-1. Jonas Brodin gets his first of the season, and then Matt Boldy seals it up with an empty netter with under 2 minutes to play in the third period. Macklin Celebrini, the big story on the Sharks side of things. Boy, is he good. That is the one thing to hang your hat on for the San Jose Sharks at this point in the season, is that you've got Macklin Celebrini as one of your big building blocks as this franchise continues to blossom and develop. But some of the other things that I thought was interesting, you've got Will Smith as well, who is expected to be a big part of the future. A little bit of a quiet game for him with a -3 in 13 minutes and just 1 of 5 in the faceoff circle. The Sharks had a very good day in the faceoff circle. That was about the only thing that you could even really be not thrilled about, because not only did the Wild control play, but even with a couple of goals taken off the board, they get out to the early lead. The Sharks tie it, but then the Wilds kind of frustrate the Sharks the rest of the way as they score 2 straight to take a 3-1 lead into the third. They add to the scoring, and Macklin Celebrini gets one back in the third, but then Boldy ends the scoring himself. Marc-Andre Fleury hardly faced any action early on. Had like 1 shot on goal against him through the first 2/3 of the first period. But as we'll hear from John Hynes in his post-game reaction coming up in segment 3, exactly what you would hope for from the Minnesota Wild after losing to the Los Angeles Kings is just a much better performance, and one that they took control of early to try to avoid falling into any sort of a trap. If you let bad teams hang around, you're going to have a bad time. That adage has been mentioned time and time again. But we did get a chance to see a little bit more of an even spread in the minutes tallies for the Wild, as we have seen in instances where they have the game pretty much well in hand. Only 1 player on offense, that was Kirill, with just another 3-point game, his 4th in the last 7 games. He played 21 minutes, 10 seconds. Beyond that, nobody else above 18 minutes, 26 seconds. Joel Eriksson Ek was at 18:26. But how about some love for Freddie Gaudreau? He had an assist in this one. He has a 5-game point streak, and this coincides with him being elevated to the third line, that we have seen his performance really take off. And Freddie is back to being a consistent contributor for this Minnesota Wild team over these last several games. He's got a couple of goals. He's got 7 points in the last 5 games. A rare off night for him, too, in the face-off circle. 4 out of 15. But he's been really good in the dot as well. And so big credit goes to Freddie Gaudreau, who seemingly has found himself as the season has pushed along and has really carved out a similar role to what he had, just maybe not being utilized as heavily as he was under Dean Evason. But he's still contributing on the penalty kill, still contributing on the power play. Yakov Trenin, 11:39 and 2 hits. That was about it. And it's going to be interesting to see if there's maybe a opportunity for Mikey Milne to work his way into the lineup, and if somebody gets a seat in the box to just kind of think things over a little bit, because light work is not ideal, but just solid play by pretty much everybody on the ice for the Minnesota Wild in this one. No players in negative territory, and solid goalie work from Fleury, who had to really make some key saves on a few of those Sharks power play looks. Solid all around game, and that's exactly what you should do against a team like the San Jose Sharks, and the Minnesota Wild did. 6-1-1 on the road now, and 9-2-2 overall. Just continuing to put up points and continuing to keep themselves at the top of the Central Division, and just a pure, like, polar opposite of what we saw compared to where this team was at last year. Last year, through the first 13 games of the season, not great at all. 5-6-2. And this was the kind of fall back down to earth for the Minnesota Wild. They had just beaten the Rangers and the Islanders in back-to-back games, and then embarked on a 7-game losing streak. So that was just the tip of that iceberg that Dean Evason just could not steer the ship out of the way of, and that led to the John Hynes era that we are currently experiencing right now. And speaking of John Hynes, we will hear his post-game comments after last night's game against the San Jose Sharks as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. My condolences to you if you had the Cincinnati Bengals last night and it came down to that 2-point conversion try for them to come away with the win that ended up not being successful. Highs and lows of the NFL football season. You never know what you're going to get on any given any given Sunday, or in last night's case, any given Thursday. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Before we take a look at tonight's opponent, the Anaheim Ducks, who are not having a good time over the last 10 games, last 9 games, I should say. Not having a great time. 2-7 in their last 9 games. But we'll talk more about the nitty-gritty. I did want to get you John Hynes' post-game comments after last night's win before we dive into tonight's opponent.
I like the mindset that we came into the game with. I thought that we played tighter. I thought we managed the puck well. We had some more physicality to our game. And I thought throughout it was consistent. We didn't have a lot of lapses. Obviously, there were certain points in the game where they had some pushes, but I thought that was good and something that we wanted to see. And it was nice to come out on top of the special teams battle as well.
Especially you have 2 goals overturned, almost a third. I mean, only one was close. To not let that deflate you.
Yeah, I think it was good. I think the reactions of the bench. I mean, one of them I think we knew right away it was going to be off. But as you said, it's those opportunities where you see how we're going to respond when it doesn't go our way, or we do that. And I thought the mindset was good.
The 2-1 goals seemed to be kind of like a line in the sand. That Kirill was the one architecting that play. No surprise.
No, I thought it was a good bounce back game too for Kirill. I thought his effort tonight. Even later in the game, I thought I think he back checked that one line rush on Smith all the way back and broke the play up. So I think he was indicative of kind of our team's mindset tonight, and we're going to continue that here.
It did seem like that shift to Sarah's point was like that line was ticked off, like that they were even a tie game at that point. That let's go out and just take control here.
Yeah, and I think the other one too is I think the first one we gave up I think was on their line too, and that's what you like about those guys is they care about keeping the puck out of the net, they care about winning their shift, and obviously they have held off the board the last couple games, so it's nice to see them play with that fire.
I'm sorry, it's hard to play on the road, and Kirill now got 7 straight multi-point games on the road. What's it to say about him that when you're away from home that he actually elevates his game?
Yeah, it's good to see. I mean, he's playing with a lot of drive, and whether it's home or on the road. But I think sometimes on the road it's harder at times because the other coach has the last matchup. So the fact that he's able to play as well as he's playing on the road is a big component. I think to his success early this season as well.
How about the team in general? You guys are off to a good start, but are you impressed by the fact that you guys are like 6 wins on the road?
Yeah, we knew we were going to have a heavy road schedule early, and I think if you want to be a competitive team, you can't just be a good home team. You got to I think have that road warrior mentality, and I think the team embraces that of just coming into another team's building. Everyone's got to be pulling the rope in the right direction, and I think we've been able to do that thus far.
Both sides of special teams improved.
Yeah, it was nice. I think both groups needed that. We needed to get a power play goal. I think to take the the pressure off and things like that. I give them credit. They worked. We worked through it and tried to find solutions tonight. We found a way to do it. It was nice for the penalty kill as well to be able to get 2 kills tonight and get the job done. And that was a difference in the game as well.
Thanks.
A true get-right game against the San Jose Sharks. And like I said, nothing wrong with taking an opportunity against a team that you should beat to be able to get a little bit of that confidence back and get yourself on track and back where you need to go. There's still plenty of work to be done by both the power play and the penalty kill, but a night on the stat sheet in which you go 3 for 3 on the kill and you are able to score a power play goal as well, you'll take that every night of the week. So good work by the Minnesota Wild against the San Jose Sharks. And now they turn their attention to the Anaheim Ducks, who have been one of 2 teams, actually 4 teams, over the last, since October 18th, one of 4 teams with just 2 wins in that stretch. They're 2-5-2 in their last 9 games. And the numbers for the Ducks, really none that strike fear into you really at all, which means that tonight's game is another one. Just go in, handle your business, and get out of town. The Ducks have scored 17 goals in the last 9 games. 17. They have given up 29. in that span. 1.89 goals for per game, 3.22 goals against. Their power play sits at 20.7%. Their penalty kill is at 72. Shots for per game, 26.6, which is one of the low marks on the season other than the Montreal Canadiens. 36.8 shots per game for their opponents, which is the most in the NHL since October 18th. And they're winning the fewest faceoffs in the entirety of the NHL at 42.8% in that span. So this is another opportunity for the Wild to get themselves back on track. And I say get on track considering that they just lost the one game to the Los Angeles Kings. It's not like they're on a 4 or a 5 game losing streak. They just have, they just kind of got off kilter a little bit against the Los Angeles Kings. But these are good opportunities against the Sharks and now the Ducks tonight to just get back to the style of play that led to the Wild being as good of a team as they have been so far this season. The Minnesota Wild's numbers by comparison since October 18th. 21st on the power play at 16.7%. And penalty kill is still third from the bottom, 66.7% in that span. So I guess the only thing that really can hurt you in this game is the power play of the Ducks. Just don't let the Anaheim Ducks stay in the game by getting a bunch of penalties. Just take care of business at 5-on-5, and this is a game that should be relatively handleable just on its own merit. As far as statistics go for the Ducks, their leading goal scorer is Troy Terry with 5 goals in 12 games. Beyond that, Leo Carlsson has 4 goals. Those are the only 2 players on the roster with over 4 goals. Ryan Strome has 3. Other players with 2 goals include Olin Zellweger, Brock McGinn, Alex Killorn, Pavel Mintyukov has 2. That's it. Everybody else, single digits, and just 25 goals in 12 games for the Ducks so far this season. Now, for Anaheim, the only thing that could really throw a bit of a pickle to the Minnesota Wild is if Lukas Dostal gets the nod for the Anaheim Ducks in this game, because he is off to a phenomenal start so far this season. And he did actually start against the Vancouver Canucks, gave up 5 goals on 37 shots. And so even though his numbers as a whole are pretty outstanding, if you attack a goalie like that the right way, you can still beat him. Dostal's numbers all told, he's 4-4-2 with a 2.5 goals against average and a .930 save percentage. In 10 games, he has given up 25 total goals. But Vancouver got to him in his most recent start. The Wild certainly could do the same here in this one, as they've got double the points that the Ducks do so far. If it's James Reimer, I mean, he's played in 2 of the games so far this year. His numbers are horrendous. So a team that's allowed 36 goals in 12 games and scored 25, it's a beatable Ducks team. Keep it 5-on-5 and try to get the early lead as the road team. The Wild are very comfortable playing road games so far this year, so just further that and continue it, and just try to come away with a nice, easy win to keep the party rolling and to keep everything just keep everything rolling the way that it needs to, with games coming up against the Montreal Canadiens as well as the Chicago Blackhawks. Like, just keep picking up the wins, and that's all you can ask for. As far as statistics go against this Ducks team, Matt Zuccarello, 27 points in 32 career games against the Ducks, 8 goals, 19 assists. Kirill Kaprizov has 17 points in 17 career games, and Ryan Hartman's got 17 points in 26 games. Kirill had a monster night last night. Maybe he'll have another one here tonight, but that will do it for today's episode of Locked On Wild. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day of the week. Make sure to hit subscribe if you have not already so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We have new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.